says it's 6 o'clock, so we will get this meeting started. The meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals, regular meeting of Monday, July the 11th. We'll call it to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Stone?
Here.
Mr. Brumfield?
Here.
Mr. Yeaman?
Here.
Ms. Deering?
Here.
Mr. Craddock?
Here.
Mr. Merricks?
Here.
Mr. Easley?
Here. Thank you. If y'all will, please rise and join me in a moment of silence and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Board members, you have before you the agenda for the evening's meeting. Do I hear an approval for the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please make it known by voting yes. Okay, thank you. You also have in your packet the minutes of the June 13th, 2022 meeting. Do I hear a motion that they stand approved as read, or are there any additions or corrections? Or as written?
So moved.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, make it known by voting.
Did you hit the second?
I'm not showing it on my screen yet.
Did you hit the
Y'all?
second button?
Okay, second. I haven't got the other one where you vote the, here. Okay.
See that?
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Is there any old business?
There is no old business.
Okay. I don't have any new business. Oh, excuse me. The new business, we have an appeals case that we will hear in a moment here. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to Article 5, Division 7 of the Pittsylvania County Zoning Ordinance, we, the Board of Zoning Appeals, have been empowered to hear and decide specific applications and appeals in support of said ordinance. In accomplishing this important task, we are charged with promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County. We must ensure that all our decisions and recommendations be directed to these goals and that each be consistent with the environment, the comprehensive plan, and in the best interest of Pennsylvania County, its citizens, and its posterity. Anyone here to speak to the board other than the applicant regarding zoning cases will be limited to 3 minutes. All right, our first case, the time is now 6:03. Case A-22-001, Joseph Humphrey.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address this issue. I submitted some comments regarding the special use permit for Shady Coves Cabins, which was issued in July of 2015 and required a 100-foot natural boundary to adjacent properties. In November of 2015, that was clarified in a letter from the Department of Code of Compliance, and it clarified that a natural boundary can be anything that can grow naturally, including weeds, grass, and trees. Shady Cove Cabins has since cleared a road along the adjacent property, which is Lot 5C. and installed a portable toilet. The road and a toilet are not grown naturally and therefore violate the conditions of the special use permit. I am, in a letter in October 2021, Director of Community Development wrote that the road was in violation of the conditions of the attached S21-10. However, the letter stated that the road may remain. This is clearly contradictory to the required 100-foot natural boundary. I am requesting that Shady Cove Cabins be brought into compliance with the requirements of the special use permit by barricading the illegal road that was cut in at both ends and returning it to natural vegetation, grass, trees, weeds, and remove the portable toilet to restore the 100-foot buffer. Alternatively, if this is not accomplished, I believe that the special use permit should be revoked and the campground shut down. And I just have two questions. If this was a neighbor of your property that was required by the county to have an adjacent or have a adjacent buffer of 100-foot natural boundary, how would you feel about the neighbor putting in a road and a portable toilet? And also, the other question, what is the purpose of imposing restrictions if they are not enforced? I also have a plan. I have several copies. This is the original plan, Plan A, that was submitted by Shady Cove Cabins, which indicated a road along the property line. And that was modified as a requirement to have the buffer installed. Well, the existing property now looks almost exactly like Plan A. So I believe that Shady Cove Cabins has violated the requirements and also has deceived the county. And I'm requesting that it be modified back to what the county required originally.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Humphrey? I think we may have some more before we close. Ms. Ragsdale, would you like to respond to Mr. Humphrey's comments?
I can state that when the letter that he's referring to was issued in 2021, I had notified the Shadys that as the road stood, it was a public access to the lake that was being installed. That was in direct violation of their conditions. The road was installed based on a erosion sediment control plan that was approved by the county and a land disturbance permit that was issued in 2017. The Shadys were in the process of acquiring a building permit for a personal dwelling on the property. They asked if the personal dwelling was placed in that area and that was used as a private drive, if it could remain. My letter also stated that the only way that the road could remain is if it was closed off to the public and it remained a solely private drive to their personal residence. It could never go to provide access to a rental cabin. It could not provide access to the lake. It had to be solely for private use. It also stated that if it was used at any time by the public, that was in direct violation of that condition, and therefore their SUP could be revoked. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. That was the agreement that I made with them regarding that, because we do not regulate personal driveways, and therefore it was not, at that time, the personal driveway was not associated with the use that the SUP was issued for. It was solely for providing access to a use that is a by right use for an A1 piece of property.
Any questions for Ms. Ragsdale?
It's my understanding Mr. Shady's going to build a personal residence.
That's correct. They actually pulled the permit the end of 2021. I can't remember if it was November or December, but that's included in your packet as well.
And that location is right at the beginning of this road in question,
Correct,
to the right of that road.
correct.
Okay.
Is there another road for access into and out of the Shady Grove cabins?
There is a road further up Hines Chapel Road that provides access into their property that they use mainly for access to their rental cabins now. It's my understanding that this road was to provide access to the lake.
Are the Shadys understanding and in agreement with what is being presented to them by the county?
In my conversations with them, yes.
Have they been required to block off that road?
We have not required that at this time. That is something that we can do, yes.
So if the man has to have a driveway to his house. So to me, right where the house is, that's where the road should end, and everything else should be blocked off.
Staff could require that of him.
Is that something we need to make as part of a recommendation?
That could be the board's decision, yes, sir.
Okay.
You can affirm, reverse, or modify the zoning administrator's decision, yes, sir.
Yeah.
My question is, I drove down to the property today, and when I went down the new road that's been put in, it went down the hill to where it ended, and then it was, I don't know if y'all have been down there, but it was where ATVs can go down to the lake from what the sign said. But if the condition was that a natural barrier was to remain in place within that 100 feet, why is it necessary that the driveway be installed that close to the property line? When there's no house that's been built or staked off, when there's another road that's providing access back into that area.
I don't know the original answer to that because that was prior to my time. I did not start until 2020, and the erosion and sediment control plan was issued in 2017. From the information that I have gathered and that that was in the file, the erosion and sediment control plan stated that that road would be to provide access to the lake, not to the other cabins. And it would have been used by the renters staying in the cabins. And at that point, it is my opinion as the zoning administrator that would have been in direct violation of the conditions of the special use permit. And therefore, if the violations continued, the special use permit would have been revoked. Since the land disturbance permit was issued, the road had started being installed. The Shadys asked if it could remain if it was private and the public did not have access to it, and it went to their personal cabin. They stated that they were previously given permission to live in a camper while their homes were being constructed. That's in violation of our zoning ordinance, so they were cited for that. And so they are in the process of constructing their personal dwelling so that they can rectify the camper violation as well. So it is my understanding that the house will go near the road. And so the road will become their personal driveway and not, at that point, a public access road. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, somewhat. There's no house, no personal driveway is needed at this time, is what my thought is.
The
Because the road is actually providing access to the lake, which is in violation.
Right. Which is
Yeah.
why we're here today is
Yeah.
because it's encroaching on the 100-foot.
Yeah.
The Shadys are saying that they will stop the public access, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that they will no longer allow public access to the lake, and that road will be purely their private driveway to their residents that is in the process or has had permits pulled to be constructed. And there is access to the campground from another direction.
I was up there Sunday afternoon, and where you go down and the curve and go back up the hill where that road goes to the left,
Yeah.
it's my understanding their house is going to be built just right on that corner, right there. So as far as the driveway is concerned, he won't need a lot of driveway, because he told me where the house was going. If that's the case, then that little area, it won't take 50 feet, that much of that road to make a driveway. The rest of the road needs to be eliminated, the way I see it.
And as Ms. Ragsdale said, if these things occur and if the road continues to be used as a public access road, then the special use permit will be pulled.
Yeah, but I think too, yeah, that's true. I think we ought to require him to physically put a physical barrier so that cannot happen. And also, in relation to the porta-john, I understand it's being built now, it's bathrooms for that area. And once they're built, that will be removed. So that's a temporary thing. So,
But my viewpoint is, a porta-john can be placed anywhere,
yeah.
and it should be placed somewhere else on the property and not within the buffer zone, in my opinion. And I don't know if the county's seen the plan of a house. I don't know if there's a carport or whatever, you know.
Any more questions for Ms.
But
Ragsdale?
That's my thoughts.
Mr. Humphries, would you like to come back up and respond to what's been said?
Yes, I would.
Not
Thank
to
you.
come up with new information, but new
Again.
to respond.
Yes, thank you. Again, the road that was put in very closely identifies with the original plan as what the Shadys wanted to do with that property. That is a dirt road that goes directly down to the lake access that they provided. It is currently being used on a regular basis by the renters, by the neighbors, by the Shadys themselves. There is no residence there, and they have 40 acres in which to put in a road to wherever their personal residence goes. And as far as environmental issues go, this road dumps directly down the hill into the lake. And when we have heavy rains, as we did the other day, there's mud that runs down that road directly into the lake down the bank. So how that addresses erosion control, I have no idea. But still, the porta potty is not a natural vegetation, and a road or a driveway, regardless of what you call it, is not natural vegetation, and that's what the county required as a condition of putting in this campground. I would just like to have that 100-foot buffer maintained, because the adjacent property is my property, and I don't feel that that's appropriate.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
So we have heard both sides of it. The original permit in the 2015 was issued in error. That has been corrected. The Shadys have been advised what they need to do, what they can do to bring the property into compliance.
Let me understand something. Was the road permit, they were issued a permit to build the road where it is, right?
Correct.
So we got a really dilemma here, to me. I mean, the man had a permit and did what he thought was right to do based on the permit, right? If I had a permit, if I went to your office and got a permit to build a road, I'd build a road.
It was constructed per the plan.
Right. So I can't fault him for that because he did what he was told to do. However, being in that 100-foot barrier and using it for public access does create a problem. So somehow we need to stop that, but at the same time, if he needs to build a house, he's going to have a driveway. But that's not our problem, really. But that part of that area is going to have to be used as a driveway to his dwelling. And he's got a permit to build that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I don't know. what-
Well, and I'll defer to our attorney. Can we require that road, that public access road, be changed or modified in such a way that it's no longer a usable road? I don't know the wording that.
I believe you can. It's going to depend how you define it. As you heard from Ms. Ragsdale, her definition was as a private driveway, does not qualify as a road, does not qualify as a violation of the natural boundary. You may change, you may affirm, reverse, or modify that decision. So I believe you could affirm and say private driveway does not violate the SUP. You could change it and say it does violate the SUP, and you can set where it doesn't violate the SUP if you so feel that the evidence has shown. But you could limit the use of the road or driveway, depending how you see it.
So
Does
if
that
I-
answer your question?
If I heard you correctly, we could say 50 feet of that road could be driveway and the rest of it.
Natural vegetation.
Without
that's-
knowing, I assume all 50 feet's in the boundary in dispute, then yes, obviously anything outside the 100-foot boundary doesn't really matter in your determination. But you could say that part of the driveway to the dwelling that's being used, just a private driveway that's necessary to get to the dwelling, is not a violation of SCP, but past that is. So the full gamut of options is at your disposal, as I said. You can affirm, reverse, or modify. So the modify part gives you flexibility to modify Ms. Ragsdale's determination as to the driveway or road and how it may or may not be used.
So can we uphold Ms. Ragsdale's decision with modifications? Is that what you're saying?
You may, yes. You may
And the
uphold
modification
with
could be-
modifications or reverse.
Could be that the Shadys can use the road as their private driveway, but it cannot be used for public access and must be returned to natural buffer. Is that?
I think that was her determination, Mr. Chair. So I wasn't sure if you meant whether you limit the parts of it or not, sir.
I think we need to limit how much can be used. with that.
But we don't know the exact footage. I mean, I guess,
If he needs more, he can come back and ask for it. What I saw Sunday and what he showed me, I mean, even if it's 100 feet's not that far.
Right.
But that's all he needs. The rest of it should be,
Is 100% of the driveway in the 100-foot buffer?
I don't believe so. The portion that comes off of Hines Chapel Road is not, and then it kind of wraps back around towards the property line and hugs the property line down to the lake.
Okay.
okay. Well, if it's not far,
Then
if we determined not to say, okay, you get to use 132 feet for driveway or what, and I'm just picking a number, but if we could some kind of way word it that he could use the road as his private driveway to his residence and past that area, the road not be used for public.
That's basically what Ms. Ragsdale has said,
Right.
right?
Yes, I stated in my letter that none of it could be used for public access. It all had to be part of their private driveway.
And I think, and y'all chime in here, I think that Mr. Humphrey, if we uphold Ms. Ragsdale's decision, that Mr. Humphrey is going to let Ms. Ragsdale know if that additional portion of that road is being used by the public. And if it's not grown back over,
So,
You're not gonna make them put a barrier up there to stop it?
well, I think that if the road is left alone,
Well, number one, we're not talking about thousands of people going up there, believe me, because I'm gonna tell you, for my trip up there, to go up there, there's 2 miles, almost 2 miles just to get to this place, off of the main road. And I don't see a flock of people going up there. So the road should grow up pretty quick, because there's not gonna be a lot going on.
so when you speak of a barrier, are you speaking of a tree or a fence or what?
What about a rope or barrels or something?
Mr. Rexdale, you said that a permit has been issued, a building permit for a house?
Yes.
When was that issued?
It was issued, issued in December of 2021.
So that was a couple months after you sent them a note that they had to stop using the road
Yes.
as public access?
And they have had some inspections done on that dwelling.
When you say some inspections on that dwelling, what do you mean by that?
They've had the foundation, let's see, in May, the foundation was inspected and rough plumbing was inspected.
Oh,
Whoa.
I was
I
up
don't,
there, there's no
we're talking
home
two,
up
we
there.
must be talking about two different things.
Unless this is the wrong inspection report. They call
Yeah.
in their own permits, so
There's-
sometimes they can call in the wrong.
There's no home being built there.
There's no foundation there.
They may
that-
have used the wrong,
Yeah.
permit
He's-
number when they called in those
Mr.
inspections.
Shady showed me where his house was going.
Okay, well, I do have the permit, and it states on the permit, homeowner's residence, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 2-amp electrical service, gas heat, cabin kit, owner to do all work.
So I
So
did
that was issued in
drive
December.
down through the property, and they have poured the foundation for it looked like another cabin, but that was between, you know, where you go up on the upper side
Yeah.
and halfway down to the lower side on the right.
Yeah.
They had started construction or poured a pad for a new.
They're also installing a bathhouse, so they could have called, when they called in, they could have used the wrong permit number for the inspection. So that may be where the confusion is. But we do have a permit for their cabin.
how about some trees to separate them?
That'd be fine. I just think that, one, there needs to be a barrier. Two, the porta-john needs to be moved. And I'm not sure there's a regulation on how many feet that has to be away from things, but he can do that, I think, easily. And three, he ought to have access to his residence, so.
This is my opinion on this whole thing, you know. The board, which I was not on it, set these conditions, and they're in violation of those conditions currently. In my opinion, that road should not be used, and at the time that the land is cleared, a house is staked off, then I think with working with Emily, the right thing would be, at that time, a driveway is laid out and they can start, whether it's part of that that's currently there, but right now, there should be no use of that road going in or out. It should be returned to a natural based on the conditions that this board passed. They should be enforced, and then when a land is cleared and a house is staked off, and then a driveway is determined, then that part, if that road falls within it, it should be used. That's how I feel about it. Because it looks like to me it's been used and put in to get access to the lake.
That's true. And I agree with you. I agree with you. But the thing is, he was given a permit to build the road. That's not his fault. Now, to make him go back and plant trees and all this stuff in that road, I think nature needs to take its course and let nature do it rather than forcing this guy to have an out-of-pocket expense to do something which he was doing by permit to start with. So I have a problem with that.
Yeah, he's already had out-of-pocket expense to build it, which we're gonna
Right, do away with.
possibly eliminate, and I think it adds insult to injury, and, you know, I don't know if he has any ramifications to come back and legally ask for recoup those monies, but I would question if he did. I don't know.
Yeah.
And for the record, the Board of Zoning Appeals back in 2015 approved the campground.
Yes.
We never addressed this road. This was done
Just the
by
100-foot barrier that was approved.
And believe me, it's a road and it's trees everywhere. It's a barrier everywhere. I mean, I really,
So basically,
and his house is down at the bottom down there, which is on down the way. But still, I don't think we need to force Mr. Shady to.
No, I wasn't saying anything about forcing him to replant stuff, but based on what I could see, it looked like at one time this was a road, an old farm country road, because you could tell how it was sloped and trees at one time had grew up in it that were cut out. Looked like some gravel was put down through there, and based on what I saw. But,
All right, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read, I hear what everyone is saying, that the county erroneously issued permits. The Shadys are out of pocket for money that they went along with permits in hand. And I, as Mr. Merrick said, I think it would be, and Mr. Stone, it would be somewhat, well, it would not somewhat, it would be unjust to go tell them, okay, now you've got to go spend some of your own money to get back in place, whereas I think with the community keeping an eye on what's going on, if the Shadys build their home, use their driveway, do not allow public access for that road, then nature, as Mr. Merrick said, nature is going to take care of itself, and it's going to fill that road in pretty quick. So with that being said, I'm going to read a positive motion to uphold Mrs. Ragsdale's decision, and we'll vote on it. If it doesn't pass, then we'll go in another direction. How's that? Whereas Joseph Humphrey filed a notice of appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals of an administrative decision regarding the administration or enforcement of the conditions placed on special use permit S-15-010 of the Pennsylvania County zoning ordinance, and whereas for reasons well supported in the record, I move the zoning administration's decision be upheld.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Merrick.
so before we vote, can I ask a question to Mrs. Ragsdale?
Yes.
Mrs. Ragsdale, exactly what we're voting on here, what would you like to see? Or what are you, I've read it, but in your, could you tell me?
Well, I mean, this is not really, it doesn't really have anything to do with what I would like to see. You know, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I I just made a determination that if the road was a private driveway and only used as a private driveway, that it could remain and not be in violation of the SUP conditions. If it is used for public access to any portion of the property or the lake, then it is in violation of the SUP, and therefore, the SUP could be revoked. And so then Mr. Humphrey appealed my determination, as he is in disagreement with that.
So, based on what this vote would say we're in agreement with you, but it doesn't say anything about blocking the road off or anything.
Correct.
Right, so-
We would be in agreement with you, but if he continues to use the road as public access,
Then,
Special use permit will
the-
be
Special use permit could be
Yes.
revoked.
you
Yes.
would.
for the whole
Okay.
campground.
For the whole
Yes.
campground.
so I have already issued
Okay.
the first violation letter to the Shadys,
Okay.
which was the one stating that it could only be used as a private driveway. After that, they get a final notice, and then after the final notice, I could begin proceedings to revoke their SUP.
Okay.
But as Mr. Dadak stated, you could also make a motion if you so choose to allow the road, the portion of the road to the dwelling to remain, and then make them allow the remaining portion of the road to return back to the natural state. And staff could enforce that as well.
Does that have to be part of this part, or is that a separate motion?
That would,
Couldn't amend it.
Separate motion.
Yeah, that's what I was
separate
thinking.
motion.
We need to
Okay.
do
You wish to
this and
amend your
then do
motion?
the
You
other.
do wish to amend the motion?
I say that
Second,
again.
second on the motion.
Okay, we've got a second on the motion that we uphold Ms. Ragsdale's decision on the
And just to-
SUP.
I'm sorry, I apologize to interject. In terms of separate motion, if this motion were to pass, you wouldn't do a second motion with different modifications. Does that make sense?
So we need to
So
fix this one.
I don't want to say which way the votes will go, but if this motion passes, there wouldn't be a second motion to then modify. Or do
I'd
a
like
separate-
to amend the motion.
Or you can make a motion to amend
Yeah.
the pending motion before your vote.
Yeah, I would like to amend the motion that the portion that's not going to his house return is natural, not be used for road. So then we need a second on that. We vote on it. And if
Yes, sir.
We don't have that many buttons on this thing.
Okay, so that we're clear, we have a positive motion, or we're reading a positive motion in support of Mrs. Ragsdale with the condition that the private driveway be used by the Shadys, or a portion of the road be used as a private driveway for the Shadys, and then the balance of the road be returned to nature.
But if it returns to nature, then they wouldn't have their own personal access to the lake either, would they? And they got lakefront property and they can't use the lake.
I think the issue is the public access.
That's what I'm thinking. It's just, how do you regulate that? It's not a problem with the road itself, it's just the use of the road. And if it grows back, if trees grow up in the road, then he can't use it himself.
But Mr. Humphries is saying that it encroaches on the 100-foot natural buffer.
But if it's strictly used by him and nobody else, does that even come into play? Because it wouldn't be part of the,
That was my determination, that if it was used strictly for their private, personal use, that it could remain and be used. And I based that determination off of how we would treat a personal residence. So if Mr. Shady built a personal cabin on this property and did not come and apply for a special use permit for the other additional rental cabins, we would regulate how close the cabin was to the property, but we would not regulate how close the driveway was to the property line. Our ordinance does not regulate gravel placement. You could cover your entire lot in gravel. The only reason that that's coming into play now is because there was a special use permit issued.
I withdraw my amendment.
So, and
But I like Mr. Merrick's original idea about putting a gate across. That way it's a physical barrier, but yet he can still access it himself if he wants to. Just his cabin renters won't be able to access it.
Yay, a row of trees, something more natural. And again, I think Mr. Humphrey is going to keep an eye on the situation. And I would hope that if the Shadys walked down that road to the lake, or rode a bicycle or whatever, that would not be an imposition worthy of coming back to the county, but that, I can't answer that question.
What's the definition of public access and private access? So, we're talking about Mr. Shady only using the road, but what if, Mr. Shady and his brother went down to the lake together? Where's the line between public and private? Is it that someone has to pay a fee to do it, or is it campers doing it? What would be the definition of public?
Staff's definition of public would be anyone other than the property owners and their private guests. So anyone paying a rental fee to stay in one of the cabins that would be considered public. Anyone who is not associated with the Shadys or the property would be considered public. So the Shadys and their private guests would be the only ones that could use that road.
Mr. Chairman, my motion, my second on that was in reference to having private access with their private guests and not a paid public access is what I was looking at. I wasn't intending on a barrier but if you wanted to put a chain up, I wouldn't be opposed. But if I wouldn't want to block it off.
Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the positive motion again back to the original, and then we'll go from there. Whereas Joseph Humphrey has filed a notice of appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals of an administrative decision regarding the administration or enforcement of the conditions placed on special use permit S-15-010 of the Pennsylvania County zoning ordinance, and whereas for reasons well supported in the record, I move the zoning administrator's decision be upheld.
And I moved that, yeah. I moved
We've
it.
got a motion.
Second.
We've got a second. All those in favor?
Wait a minute, it's
Nope.
canceled.
Canceled out here.
I gotta move it again, okay.
Got Mr. Merrick's motion, Mr. Stone's second. All those in favor, vote.
So,
Okay.
okay,
The decision was upheld. Mr. Humphrey, we will trust that you'll keep an eye on the adjacent property for the county. No, sir, the case is closed, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. And that case is closed at 6:43 PM. All right. Thank you all for your help on that. All right, the time is 6:44 PM. Public hearing case S-22-009, Mark Blanchett. Report.
Case S-22-009, Mark Blanchett has petitioned for a special use permit on 19.76 acres located on Highway 58, Martinsville Highway in the Tunstall Election District for a campground. On June 7th, 2022, the Planning Commission recommended by a 7-0 vote with no opposition that the petitioner's request be granted with conditions submitted by staff. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Mark Blanchett is here to represent the petition.
Mr. Blanchard, have anything you'd like to say to the board?
I just bought this property a few months ago, and it's been an existing campground for a while, but when I bought it, I didn't realize it didn't have any permits or anything, so I'm just trying to get everything passed where I can do it legally.
A couple of questions. How many campers are currently there now? Or
Right
camp
now,
units?
Right now, I'm limited to 15 campers, because I've been on a well. I have paid the county to come in and put a water tap in. They came and did that about 2 weeks ago. So I'm just waiting to tap into that.
Okay. You mentioned water. Tell us about sewage, water, electricity. How does that work?
At one time, it was basically a trailer park, and all the trailers have been moved out. There is one trailer on the property that an elderly couple has been living in. Recently, they both got sent to a nursing home, so that mobile home will be moved soon. But basically, the campers are split up and using the electricity and septic systems that was used for those mobile homes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
There are no permanent sites, right?
Right.
Just, there's one unit back in the corner, looked like had a shed attached to it. It looked pretty permanent to me. It's to the right of the
I know which one
mobile
you're
home.
talking about. That guy, he does like some motorcycle racing up street at Lake Sugar Tree, and he just keeps his motorcycle in there and works on it in there, just keep it out of the weather. But it's just, a couple of boards put up and a tarp around it, nothing.
So but he doesn't live there every day.
He lives in that camper, yes, but
Well, that's permanent site.
most of what I have is these out-of-town workers that are in for
Yeah.
solar farms and stuff like that. That's pretty much all of what I have in there.
But he lives there year-round, every day.
He's lived there for several months.
Okay, is that considered permanent? Well,
Ms. Ragsdale, how does that travel trailer with a permanent?
So our ordinance states that nothing can be constructed or attached to the camper that would make it a permanent structure. So it cannot be set on a permanent foundation. We don't allow decks or things like that to be built onto campers. And we have allowed some campgrounds to go in and put the awnings over the campers, but the awning does not belong to the person who owns the camper. It belongs to the campground, therefore the camper could be moved out, another camper could be moved in. That carport structure remains regardless of who's there. But our ordinance does not allow anything to be attached to or constructed in a way that the camper, it makes the camper immobile. Because it is designed to be a transient occupancy.
That camper can still be moved. It's still sitting on the wheels and tires and stuff, so, there'd be no problem hooking to it and pulling out of there. This is just a few boards put up with a tarp around it and a little roof put on there for him to park his bike in.
It's not a permanent.
Right.
It's not a permanent attachment.
Right.
Very good. Okay. Does that answer your question?
yeah.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you, sir. We may have a few more after we're discussed a little bit. Is there anyone from the public signed up to speak?
We do not have anyone signed up to speak.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? All right, we will close the public hearing at 6:49. Comments?
I move it be granted.
All right, we've got a positive motion
Second.
and a second. All right, then let me read a positive motion. Whereas Mark Blanchett is requesting a special use permit for a campground, and whereas we find no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. And we've got some recommendations down here. Let's,
Conditions.
I apologize. Can I add these?
Yeah.
Is that legal for me to add? Okay.
You haven't finished your motion,
All
sir.
right. The harmony and purpose and intent of the ordinance, and whereas there are no significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated through conditions, I move the special use permit be granted with the following conditions. Any future expansion will require site plan approval by the Pennsylvania County Community Development Office to ensure compliance with all applicable zoning regulations, and it must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. So we've got a motion and a second. Mr. Blanchett, if that was approved, could you live with those conditions? Yes. Okay. All right, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, make it known by voting. All right, so your motion's carried. Thank you for coming out. Good luck to y'all. The time is now 6:51. Case S-22-010 is open. Ms. Ragsdale?
Case S-22-010, Deborah Goodwin has petitioned for a special use permit on 1.56 acres located on State Road 718, Dry Fork Road, in the Tunstall Election District for the placement of a double-wide mobile home. On June 7, 2022, the Planning Commission recommended by a 7-0 vote with no opposition that the petitioner's request be granted. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Deborah Goodwin is here to represent the petition.
Ms. Goodwin, thank you for coming out. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the board to add to your application?
Only if you guys have a question about anything. This was my old home place. The property's been in my family 100 years. My mom died in November, and my family was like, sell it, and I'm like, I just can't part with it. So I want to just put a double wide and just let that be my home.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Goodwin?
Does she intend on living in the
Yes,
trailer?
sir.
In the double one?
All right. Thank you, ma'am. We may have some questions that will go forward. Thank you. Has anyone signed up to speak?
We do not have anyone signed up to speak.
Anyone from the public want to address the board on this case? And we will close the public hearing at 6:53. Comments?
I have no problem with that.
Any problem at all?
And I'll read a positive motion. We'll see how that goes. Whereas Deborah Goodwin has petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for placement of a double-wide mobile home, and whereas we find no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, I move this special use be granted.
So moved.
A second.
Motion by Mr. Craddock. Second, Ms. Deering?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? All right, thank you, ma'am. Good luck to you. All right, the time is now 6:54. Public hearing, case S-22-02-012, Donna Clay. Report, Ms. Ragsdale.
Case S-22-012, Donna Clay has petitioned for a special use permit on 5.5 acres located on State Road 1246 Evangel Drive in the Dane River Election District for a public garage. On June 7th, 2022, the Planning Commission recommended by a 7-0 vote with no opposition that the petitioner's request be granted with the conditions recommended by staff. The staff summary is enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Ricky Clay is here to represent the petition.
Hello. Mr. Clay, how you doing?
Doing good.
Anything you'd like to add to your application?
No, I think I got it covered.
Okay.
Any questions y'all got, just ask me.
What are your hours of operation?
9 to 4, or maybe 10 to 3.
Just as needed, huh?
Yeah.
Days of operation?
Uh,
The days?
5,
Okay.
Monday through Friday.
One of the recommendations by the staff is that you erect a screen of some nature around the property. What are your plans on that? What are you thinking?
Well, I had done removed all of my parts cars, so I have nothing but woods that you can see. So I don't really see no need to put one up unless y'all do recommend me to do it. But you can't see nothing but woods. So,
If the board made a positive motion with the request for a fence, would you be able to live with that?
I could. I don't want to. I'm
Sir?
getting old. I'm getting old. I don't want to. I don't want to spend no more money than I got to.
I understand. I understand.
They're talking about inoperable vehicles be screened.
Right,
The repairs are done inside the building.
right.
Right, okay.
And of course, now, there are a lot of parts, car parts, sitting around the outside. How do you get into your shop? From the backside?
You get into my house on the Vans
No,
Drive.
but I know that, right. We drove down, I drove down to it, but
Okay.
how do you physically get a vehicle into your shop?
My tractor.
But I mean,
I just drive it in there.
but I mean,
the ones that run.
you've got 3 doors on the front, 2 of them are blocked, and one doesn't look like it's been used a lot. Are there doors around the backside that you use?
No.
Or you just,
I ain't get in them doors.
okay.
And when I get a bunch of parts sitting around, I do get Don's Auto Recycling to bring a container, and I fill it up, and then they haul it off.
Any questions from the board? Comments?
I don't have any. I mean, as long as he doesn't have vehicles, I don't see the need for the fence, as far as to fence the building. Would
Well,
it-
inoperable vehicles per our code are any vehicle that does not have all of its running parts, does not have a valid inspection sticker, and does not have, does not have valid tags.
Right.
So any vehicles that are sitting at his shop waiting for parts so that they can run are technically inoperable per our zoning code. Because he is a business, they can sit there for 60 days as long as they are in an fenced enclosure. So he could put, some type of fencing up behind his shop or somewhere around his shop. It doesn't have to be the entire property, just wherever he's gonna keep vehicles. And as long as, if they're sitting there, they can be in that. But they would have to be screened and enclosed per the ordinance.
And as an example, when we rode down, excuse me, the other day, there were 2 vehicles in your yard, in your driveway, that neither had tags on them, so I'm assuming they were works in progress.
They are ones that people haven't picked up yet. They are, put them on top of the hill, and they come and pick them up on rollbacks. And they are supposed to be on the way and pay me.
Are they still sitting there?
Yes, I ain't got paid.
So you can understand
I understand. I understand.
the concern of the
Yeah.
county, and our job is not to judge or pick on anything. It's just, we have to do the best we can to uphold the ordinance.
Now, as far as the inoperable vehicles, the ones that I do have down there, I got a car sitting right beside of them that I have to fix, and I have to have his car to fix this car. As soon as I fix them, they gonna be sitting on top of the hill
Right.
for them to pick up.
And again, those vehicles sitting on top of the hill are inoperable.
Oh, they will run.
Okay.
I mean,
But they don't have tags or stickers.
No, they don't have
Right.
tags
And so that's the
Right.
violation of the ordinance, and that's what we've got to see if
But
we
I
can.
try to get these people to pick them up as soon as
Right,
I finish.
I understand.
But some people are just kind of slow when it comes to paying me.
Right, I understand. I understand. Any more questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question. How far, on the Cedars Clark's Mill, Road, does his property go all the way to Clark's Mill Road? Where I noticed that the sign was on facing that road. Does your property go all the way there? So you own all the trees to
Yes.
Clark's Mill Road?
And I own all the way to the landfill.
Okay, so your land backs up to the landfill.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So I have to look at the landfill, which is nice. I think cars look better, but you know.
All right. Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, we may have a few more questions for you after we talk a little bit about it. Thank you, sir. Anyone from the public signed up to speak? Anyone from the public like to speak? Okay, with that being said, we'll close the public hearing at 7:02. Ms. Ragsdale, how did staff become aware of the garage?
The applicant had quite a few parts cars that were parked all in the woods along Clark's Mill Road. So we actually cited him for an automobile graveyard. And then we learned that he had the public garage in operation as well with no permit. So he's worked with us. He, as he stated, he's cleaning up the parts cars. And he's applying for the special use permit to get him into compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Very good, very good. So, per the ordinance, if we make a positive motion, we're going to have to make the recommendations of repair activities be contained within an enclosed structure. An inoperable vehicle shall comply with Chapter 9 of the Pennsylvania County Code and must be stored in an area screened in accordance with PCC 35-121. And as Ms. Ragsdale said, I don't think we have to determine the size of the fence. It just has to have the inoperable cars enclosed in it. So
The
that would
ordinance
be-
states it has to be at least 6 feet tall.
It's got to be 6 feet. I'm talking about, I guess, the area.
Oh,
of
no,
it.
not
It
the
doesn't-
area.
It doesn't have to enclose 5 acres of land is
That's correct.
what I'm working toward, so,
Well, and that's for any public garage.
right.
And so
exactly.
it's not just his, it's
not
going to
just
be
him,
any
right.
public garage. So
He's
we
gotta
have to
have a-
follow the guideline for all of them, so.
And it's got to be a 6-foot, at least a 6-foot fence.
Correct.
I
And
move-
that's solely because he wishes to store some parts cars, as he stated, he pulls parts off of one car to use for the other. If he did not have parts cars, and he just had vehicles he was working on, doing oil changes and stuff like that, the screening may not be required, but since he stated that he will have some parts cars, for no longer than 60 days, but they will be on the property for a period of time, that screening is required by the ordinance.
How about the parts and things that are around, not just the cars, but the parts that are different pieces of cars and things of that nature? Where do they have to be stored? Can they be stored?
So they need to be either, per ordinance, they either need to be inside an enclosed structure, or any of the scrap needs to be, if he has a recycling, if Don's Recycling brings a bin and he fills it up and they come pick it off, that's in accordance with the ordinance, but it can't be just in piles on the ground. It has to be in something.
Which was what I noticed more really than the inoperable cars, where they have seats and radiators and rims and hoods and fenders and things of that nature. They were in order. They were orderly. I'll give you that, but they were, right. Right. And we understand, again, we're trying to come up with a positive motion so you can continue to operate within the guidelines of it. Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like to come back up so you could,
Well, I got a bunch of woods all around. Now, if I put a fence up just where nobody, if they pulled up, they could see my park car, could I just do that instead of having to make a complete square, up against woods? That way it would save me a little money on the fencing wire.
the ordinance reads that inoperable vehicles must be stored in an area screened in accordance with the code. Now, that's,
There's trees considered screened?
no, afraid not.
Shrubbery does, but not trees. And shrubbery can be not less than 15 feet in width and 8 feet in height. So you could do
build
a
fence
solid,
chip and you
a
plant
solid
shrubs.
screen of shrubbery as long as it met those requirements, or a fence. And I believe the ordinance states that it's from any right-of-way, it has to be screened. So as long as you could completely screen from Clark's Mill Road, we could work with you on that.
I can do this.
We want you to operate. We're not, we don't want to
Well, I
make
want
it
to keep working. Long, can't-
4 or 5 hours a day if you need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good? All right. Thank you, sir. We'll work on this. So, sounds like we want a positive motion with the conditions placed by the county ordinance.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I'll read a positive motion, we'll see how it goes. Whereas Donna Clay is requesting has petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for a public garage, and whereas we find no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and whereas there are no, there are no significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated through conditions, I move the special use permit be granted with the following conditions. Repair activities shall be contained within an enclosed structure. Number 2, Inoperable vehicles shall comply with Chapter 9 of the Pennsylvania County's Code and must be stored in an area screened in accordance with PCC 35-121.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, make it known. All right, so it's a unanimous decision. Good luck to y'all. Thank y'all for coming out. Thank you for your time and patience. Do I hear a motion that this meeting be adjourned?
So moved.
All in favor, stand up.